November 22, 1985, the Friday of Michigan's second weekend of firearm deer season. Two best friends, both 27 years old, both from the Detroit suburbs, loaded their guns and gear into a black 1980 Ford Bronco and headed north. They'd been doing this kind of thing together since they were kids and Boy Scouts. The plan was simple: drive up to the Mio area, visit some friends, drink some beers, maybe shoot a deer if they got lucky. They never arrived at their destination. They never bought hunting licenses. They never came home. No one has seen Tyll, Brian Ognjan, their truck, their guns, or any of their gear since that weekend. For 18 years, nobody knew what happened to them. Then a woman who'd been living in terror since the night they disappeared finally opened her door to a detective who wouldn't stop knocking. What she described was one of the most brutal, horrifying murders in Michigan criminal history. This is a signal-lost investigation. Before we get into what happened in those woods, you need to know who these two men were. Because everything about this case starts with the fact that they were ordinary, likable guys who did absolutely nothing to deserve what was coming. Tyll was 27 years old, 6'2", brown hair, green eyes, a beard. He worked as a machinist for his father-in-law and had recently gotten married. By every account, he was a punctual, reliable employee, the kind of guy who didn't miss work without calling. Brian Ognjan was also 27, 5'10", sandy brown hair, brown eyes, a mustache. He worked as a mechanic. He was saving money because he was planning to propose to his girlfriend. He had his whole life mapped out. The two of them had been best friends since childhood, growing up in the Detroit area. They played cards together, hunted together. On Friday, November 22, 1985, they loaded David's black 1980 Ford Bronco, Michigan plates 447HRZ, with their hunting gear and headed north. The plan was to visit David's family cabin in White Cloud and stop to see a friend named Dennis Gallup in the Mio area along the way. They never made it to the cabin. The last confirmed activity was in the Mio area, where they cashed a $50 check. The last place anyone saw them alive was a bar called Linker's Lost Creek Lodge, about 5 miles west of Mio. When Monday came and neither man showed up for work, both families knew immediately something was wrong. These were not the kind of men who vanished without a word. Their families reported them missing, and for the next 18 years, nobody could prove what happened. The search for Tyll and Brian Ognjan became one of the most exhaustive missing persons investigations in Michigan history. Law enforcement threw everything they had at it. Scuba dive teams searched lakes and rivers. Aircraft flew over hundreds of square miles of forest. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in. Cadaver dogs worked the woods. Agencies from every level of government were involved: local, state, federal. The case was featured on national television. Unsolved Mysteries ran a segment. Cold Case Files covered it. Flyers were posted statewide. Every November for years, police published appeals to Michigan's 700,000 deer hunters. If you're in the woods near Mio, keep your eyes open. Thousands of tips poured in over the years. Were they at the bottom of a lake? Did they run off with women? Nothing panned out. Nothing. Police had absolutely zero physical evidence. No bodies, no truck, no weapons, not one piece of anything. But they had rumors, and those rumors kept pointing to the same place, to one family, the Duvall brothers. If you grew up anywhere near Mio, Luzerne, or Glenny in northern Michigan, you knew the name, and you knew to stay away. There were 7 of them, 7 brothers, and the word that comes up again and again is feral. They split their time between Monroe, Michigan, and the woods surrounding Mio. They drank hard, they fought constantly. Women with black eyes and busted lips were routine sights around the Duvalls. As one ex-girlfriend put it, that's the way all the boys treated their women. Police actively avoided interacting with them unless they had backup. Farmers found their cows shot and butchered, courtesy of the brothers, and wouldn't report it. The most common comparison was to the movie Deliverance. Except the Duvalls were real. They were 3 levels lower than Deliverance. The Duvall brothers had been at Linker's bar the same night David and Brian were there. Multiple people reported hearing them brag about killing the hunters. They implied they'd disposed of the bodies by feeding them to pigs. But second-hand boasts aren't enough to convict. Fear kept the case frozen. Enter Detective Robert Lesneski. Everyone called him Bronco. When Bronco inherited this cold case more than 15 years after the disappearance, he had almost nothing to work with. But Bronco was obsessive, the kind of detective who worked hundreds of hours on his own time. He carried a shovel in the trunk of his car so he could pull over and dig whenever he passed a suspicious piece of metal. Bronco didn't have an address, so he just started knocking on doors, every door near the bar. After his shifts ended, he'd drive out and go door to door. Then, as light was fading one evening, a woman cautiously cracked her door. She started shaking so violently it looked like she was having a seizure. "You're going to get me killed," she said. For the first time in his career, Bronco literally stuck his foot in the doorway. He knew then he absolutely had something. For months, he drove to her home, always in unmarked cars so the Duvals wouldn't notice, and slowly, carefully, built her trust. For 18 years, the Duvals had been showing up at her home. They made comments about her granddaughter. One of her dogs was shot. Another was deliberately run over in her own yard. For a long time, Barb told the story through the eyes of her deceased friend, Ronnie Emery. As long as she told it that way, she couldn't be compelled to testify. Bronco knew she was protecting herself. In 2002, Barb was brought to Lansing and compelled to testify. Finally, Bronco shut off the tape recorder. He leaned forward, inches from her face. He begged her to tell what she knew. Something changed in her expression. "Bronco, you know I saw it, don't you?" she said. "Yes, I know," he said. "But I need to hear it from you." She paused. "I'm a dead woman," she said. And then she told it. She watched the hunters get into a verbal altercation. In a clearing near her home, illuminated by the headlights of trucks, the Duval brothers were beating Tyll and Brian Ognjan with baseball bats. The hunters were begging for their lives. The brothers were laughing. They were swinging at the men's heads while they pleaded and screamed. The beating continued long after both men had stopped moving. Then there was a knock at Barb's door. One of the brothers stood there. His message was short. "You didn't see anything. Pigs gotta eat too." Barb admitted she'd had 9 drinks that night. The defense used this aggressively, but she never wavered on what she saw. They had their eyewitness. Once JR and Coco Duval were behind bars, something shifted in the community. Other witnesses, people who had been silent for years, began to come forward. Multiple people told investigators they had heard the brothers brag about the killings. One reported overhearing them discuss putting the bodies through a wood chipper. Others heard them talk about feeding the remains to their pigs. There was also the matter of the truck. Kenny Duval actually admitted to scrapping the hunter's Ford Bronco and selling it for parts in a taped interview. But when he was called to testify in court, he suddenly couldn't remember anything. Courtroom amnesia. The family code held, even from the witness stand. In the fall of 2003, 18 years after Tyll and Brian Ognjan disappeared, Raymond J.R. Duval and Donald Coco Duval stood trial for their murders. The trial was moved for security reasons. There had been rumors of escape plans involving motorcycle gangs and bricks found missing from the Duval's jail cells. Security was extremely tight. The prosecution was led by Assistant Attorney General Donna Pendergast. The case was brought by the Michigan Attorney General's office after local prosecutors had declined to pursue charges. The challenge was enormous. They had no bodies, no physical evidence of any kind, no blood, no DNA, no murder weapon. The case rested on the weight of testimony and fear. The jury deliberated for approximately 2 hours. Guilty, both of them. 2 counts of first-degree murder each. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Helen Ognjan, Brian's mother, said simply, "God answered my prayers." At sentencing, the Duval brothers declared their innocence as they were taken away in chains. Here's what still haunts this case, even after the conviction. Neither Till's nor Brian Ognjan's remains have ever been found. Not a bone, not a tooth, nothing. If the accounts are accurate, the Duvals put the bodies through a wood chipper and fed them to their pigs. Pigs are remarkably efficient. There may simply be nothing left to find. The black Ford Bronco has never been found. Kenny Duval's admission of scrapping it was not enough. Without the truck, there is nothing to prove forensically. The Tyll family's obituary notice read, "The Tyll family suggests that all parents give their children an extra hug today in David's memory." Closure has never truly come. This case turned 40 years old in November 2025. The Duval brothers remain in prison. Their appeals have been denied at every level. It's a testament to a detective who refused to let it die, a prosecutor who took a risk, and a woman who finally decided the truth was worth the danger. Tyll and Brian Ognjan walked into a bar where 2 brothers decided they deserved to die. They were beaten to death while they begged for their lives. One detective wouldn't quit. One woman opened her door, but David and Brian are still out there somewhere. Their families never got to bury them. David Kenneth Tyll, 1958 to 1985. Brian George Ognjan, 1958 to 1985. Their remains have never been found. Raymond and Donald Duvall, life without parole,